Let's play a little bit more from Donald Trump tonight from his victory speech, talking about when others drop out, he benefits. Let's play that.
Tonight we had 45, 46%, and tomorrow you'll be hearing, you know, if they could just take the other candidates and add them up. And if you could add them up, because, you know, the other candidates amount to 55%. So if they could just add, they keep forgetting that when people drop out, we're going to get a lot of votes. You know, they keep forgetting. They don't say it.
And it is just 2 a.m. here on the East Coast. We are still watching the votes being counted, the vote tally coming in from the state of Nevada. Let's put the latest here on the board for you to look at here at the top of the hour. There you see Donald Trump, a decisive, huge lead, 45%. This is with 19% of the vote in. Marco Rubio right now in second place with 24.7%, and Ted Cruz with 20%. Again, this 19% of the vote in. We're live. Our coverage continuing here throughout this hour here on CNN. I mean, to Donald Trump's point, again, he is correct. There is this assumption that many people have had that if only there was one other candidate, all those votes would coalesce and it would be more than Donald Trump.
That's not actually the argument, and not to make Donald Trump's head explode, but if you look at the national polls right now, his average is what, 37%, right? Okay, so the non-Trump vote is much more than that. So obviously, as he points out, some of those votes, some of those maybe Carson votes, some of the Cruz votes, some of the Rubio votes, some of the Kasich votes, some percentage of that is obviously going to go to Trump. But it is also true that the lack of consolidation in the anti-Trump vote is what is putting him in the catbird seat.
But
here.
he's
And the only chance to beat him, I think it's pretty safe to say, is in a one-on-one race, right? Because the race so far has been Trump against a bunch of people you never heard of and who are never on TV, right? So he dominates in a race like that. The only chance is Trump mano a mano with Rubio or Cruz, and it's a big national story. They're debating, they're barnstorming the states. Otherwise, he's going to sail to the nomination.
In a general election, say against Hillary Clinton or against Bernie Sanders, how does Trump match up?
He does very well.
If you look at it today, Trump can make the case. I can compete in Michigan, a state that hasn't gone for Republicans since I think 1988. If my math is right there, for a very long time. Trump can say, I can compete there. I'll compete in Pennsylvania because I can compete with blue-collar white voters. Now, Democrats will say, yeah, but we'll start running ads. You know, there was an African-American protester at your rally. You said, you know, rough them up, and that's okay. They'll start running their rapists, their murderers, and try to go after Latino voters. But right now, he loses to Sanders in some polls. He's competitive in others. Forget general election polling right now, but it would be no. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, but they're not advertising on the general election. You know, he's not attacking Hillary Clinton. He's doing it at his rallies, but he's not doing it on television, or Bernie Sanders, and they're not doing it against him. It would be messy and it would be bloody. But for those who say Donald Trump cannot win, you're wrong.
If you can win a major party nomination, you at least have some non-zero chance of winning a general election.
Way more than a non-zero chance. He put states like Michigan and Pennsylvania in play. There's a reason that the head of the SEIU and other union leaders have expressed concern that their members will defect from the Democrat-endorsed candidate to Donald Trump. There's a reason for that. Survey USA poll taken in September showed in a head-to-head matchup with Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump wins the African-American vote by 25%. I know this is polling that might not matter right now, but I think these are big indicators that he can do exceedingly well in a general election.
He would be the candidate, the major nominee, the major party nominee with the highest unfavorability ratings since they've been polling.
I want to go back to Jake, who's getting some more entrance polling information in. Jake?
But look at Hillary's trust number.
Thanks, Anderson. Yeah, with 20%, 21% of the vote in, Donald Trump is up with 44.1% of the vote. Marco Rubio with 25%. Ted Cruz with 21.3%. Carson and John Kasich still in single digits. So still a very dominant lead. We're expecting, I guess, about 70,000 or more voters to have turned out for the Republican caucuses, which is a huge improvement from 2012.
That's right. This is, again, a relatively new process for Nevada. This is only the third presidential election caucus in Nevada. But, you know, we talked earlier, David, about the kind of qualities that the voters were looking for in the candidates. And now that we have more information on the results, we know how each candidate fared based on those
Yeah,
qualities.
we can see exactly why Donald Trump is getting near half the vote and why Rubio and Cruz are splitting, quarter. Take a look at these numbers. For the voters that wanted to see a candidate that could bring change, Donald Trump wins going away. 60% to 17% for Cruz, to 16% for Rubio, to 4% for Kasich. They make up about 23% of the electorate. Donald Trump, the change candidate. How about the tell it like it is candidate? This category was basically created for Donald Trump. This is what his entire campaign has been about, and he wins it going away 86% to Cruz's 8%, to Rubio's 4%, and Carson's 2%. That's about 20% of the electorate. Now let's look at a Rubio strength. Electability. If you're looking for a candidate who you believe can win in November, well, here, just a slim majority, 51%, go with Rubio. That's looking for a candidate that can win in November. Trump gets 33%, Cruz 11%, and Kasich down at 2%. And then shares my values, which is actually the largest share of the electorate among these issues. 30% of the voters want a candidate who shares their values. Cruz wins this category with 42%, Rubio at 26%, Trump at 20%, and Carson at 6%. So, Dana, what you see here, you have an electability candidate, you have a values candidate, and then you have this dominant frontrunner who is telling it like it is and can bring change. You add those two together, and that's why you see Trump so dominant. One thing that I think is worth noting on the electability score, Donald Trump, or I should say Marco Rubio, has won this category everywhere but New Hampshire, where Marco Rubio had fifth place showing, or a very disappointing showing after that debate. This has been his category all along. This is Donald Trump's best score today among that electability number.
A third of the electorate.
A third of the electorate want to go with him, that want a winner in November. So all that talk about, Donald Trump
Right.
cannot win a general election, he's not winning this category yet, but he's
doing
improving.
better.
Exactly.
He's doing better, as we've been discussing since we saw the early win tonight from Donald Trump, that it's not just, people here in Washington kind of coming to terms with the fact that he very well could be their nominee. More importantly, it's the voters out there who are looking at him in a different way.
What's interesting also is that the candidates who won those categories, that's their pitch. Marco Rubio is out there saying, I'm the person that can defeat Hillary Clinton. I'm the one that's electable. I'm the one they fear the most. Ted Cruz, we heard him this evening, again, reciting a list of why he shares the values of the voters, and then Donald Trump doing what he does. So it's not as though voters aren't believing them. Those who care about electability, going for Rubio. Those who care about values, going for Cruz. It's that a larger slice of the Republican Party cares more about being an outsider, telling it like it is, bringing change, all the things that Donald Trump represents. Anderson?
It's also something that Donald Trump early on embraced the anger that he clearly, he does have, for somebody who's not a career politician or has never been a politician before, he does have a finely tuned antenna to certainly what his supporters, what his potential supporters seem to want. He clearly understood the anger out there, and whether he wrote it or got in front of it or whatever, he made the most of it.
Of all the candidates we were listening to tonight, and we've all been talking about this, they were talking about process. I'm going to go on, I'm going to win this, I'm going to win this, I'm going to win this. Trump did that too. But Trump's the only one who has had sort of this make America great again, bumper sticker kind of slogan that he stuck to, a message, and he has dug it in. And everybody else is talking, well, I could win this and I can win that. He's like, we're going to get this over with fast. I'm going to get to a general election, and I'm going to be a great president.
Yeah.
It's completely different. He's not the, he talks about polls all the time. He didn't tonight, I don't think. A little bit. But tonight, he's moving away from being a pundit to a degree, which the other candidates were, and talking about what he wants to do.
Yeah, and he said tonight, you're going to be proud of your president and proud of your country.
That was
and
powerful.
yeah,
Right.
and he knows
Powerful
for
line.
these last many years, these voters have despised this president and haven't been so proud of this country. So I think he connects with those voters there. And throughout his speeches, he's talked about the carrier plant moving to
Right.
Mexico. He knows that this is something that resonates with blue-collar voters. So he, I think, more than any other candidate, has improved vastly
Right.
as a
John, and then we
politician.
got a good break.
What do you remember from The Apprentice? You're fired. Donald Trump knows it. He has a brand. So what does he do in this campaign? Winning, 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 strong, strong, winning, winning. he brands himself and he brands the other guys. Low energy, loser, you're gone.
Liar.
Liar.
Yeah, agree
Yeah.
or disagree with him, he has been brilliant at branding himself and branding the others, and he's winning.
Yeah. We got to take a quick break. More discussion ahead as our live coverage continues as the votes continue to be counted. We'll be right back.